Okay, so in a lot of my presets on the Quad Cortex, I use something that's honestly, I don't know that I talk enough about, and that is using low pass and high pass filters. So I may have talked about this in using captures that have cabs built in, because I've talked about, some of those captures can be a little bassy, and we can use a high pass filter to cut off some of that extraneous low end. But I don't talk a lot about the fact that I often use high pass and low pass filters within all my presets to help shape the tone. So let's start off by talking about kind of what high pass and low pass filters are. So if we look over here, let's just go ahead and we're just going to run just a line here that we won't use. But if we go down to the EQs, there's two options in EQs that allows you to do high pass and low pass filters. There's other places you can do it, and we're going to talk about that. But if we start off just with the low high cut, this is a simple piece here. You've got your high pass filter, which, I always get them confused. You talk about high pass filter, low pass filter, you think about low end and high end. And you just need to remember that the high pass filter cuts off low end, the low pass filter cuts off high end. So it's about filtering out things above and below the levels that you set. So in this case, we've got the high pass filter cutting off anything below 20 hertz, and the low pass filter is defaulting to 16,000 hertz. So this can be important for guitar modelers because a guitar cabinet only has a certain frequency range. And a lot of times the standard you see is between 70 hertz and 6,000 hertz. So if you're trying to, generate a digital signal representing a guitar amp, you want to stay in those kind of ranges. Now, obviously, once you mic an amp, you're in a room, maybe the room is bringing up certain other high frequencies and things like that. But for the most part, coming out of the cabinet, you're going to be in that range. And obviously, it also varies by what speaker's in there. Smaller speakers might have kind of a higher range than a larger speaker that's going to have more low end. But I think generally, if you're talking about the standard 10, 12-inch speakers, you're kind of in that 70 to 6,000 range. So I find it useful on not only the Quad Cortex, but really on every modeler I've used to take advantage of using low pass filters and high pass filters. And luckily for the Quad Cortex, you can get it to sound good without that. To me, using it on the Quad Cortex is just kind of an extra little kind of subtle tweaking of the tone just to make it sound more realistic. There's other modelers like the Apero 2 Stomp, which I've done videos on, I'll link to that here, that you have to use a low pass filter, otherwise it sounds really bad, in my opinion. So it's different on different modelers. Some you have to use at least a low pass filter on the top end, otherwise it can sound really artificial. For the Quad Cortex, the IRs here and the amps, I think, are done well enough that there's not a lot of extraneous kind of tones above those ranges. So it's more of a subtle effect in terms of cutting off the top end. So like I said, this exists. There's a low high cut, which is specifically for doing this. Also, a Graphic 9 EQ has a high pass filter and low pass filter as well. So you can use that EQ to shape it. So if you want to use EQs, you can do this. But where I typically use it is in two major areas. One is for IRs and cabs, and the other is on ambient effects. So let's start with IRs and cabs. So if we start with the cab, so let's go ahead and I'm going to bring up kind of a crunchy tone here. And this is a built-in cab on the Quad Cortex. It's a 4x12 Mesa Boogie with V30s in it. If you go to the second page of this, all cab blocks on the Quad Cortex have a high pass filter and low pass filter built in. So you can see here, I've got those sets to 80 hertz for the high pass filter. So anything below 80 hertz is getting kind of cut off. It's not a hard cut off. There's a slope to it, but I'm cutting off some of that low end. And then the low pass filter, I'm cutting off anything above 6,000 hertz. So for this crunchy tone, that allows it to kind of keep it from getting too much flubby low end, too much kind of unpleasant high end, and keeping it sounding, I think, a little more realistic to what a guitar cabinet in the room would sound like. So if I take this off, so the default settings for these is off. Without it, doesn't sound bad. But I do think on the top end, you can get a little bit of kind of digital artifacts on the top end that can make it sound a little artificial. It's a subtle thing, but it's there. Whereas if we keep it kind of with those tweaks on the ends, it kind of warms up a little bit, and to me it sounds more natural and realistic. Now obviously a V30 speaker in and of itself is a very mid-focus speaker, so this can be somewhat more prevalent on if you're using other IR types, but this is what I have on this preset that we're going to play with. On the IR side, all IR loaders also have a high pass and low pass filters built in, and it's per IR. So if I'm running 2 IRs here, I have independent controls for each. And sometimes I'll set them differently, but again, my default is that kind of 80 to 6,000. Whereas if we turn it off, and let's go ahead and turn off the ambient effects, maybe we can hear it more clearly then. Again, it doesn't sound bad at all, but I think you can get just a little bit of a better tone by just kind of cutting off those ends. It sounds to me a little more natural. So I think, that's important on the IRs and cab blocks. And you can use this to do other things as well. So for example, if I have a lead tone here, one of the ways to warm up your lead tone is to bring down that low pass filter. So especially this is true if you want to get, say, kind of more of an Eric Johnson-y kind of tone. Obviously you can roll off the treble on the amp model, but I find that that can kind of take away some of the life of the tone. If instead you pull down the low pass filter to, say, around 4,000 hertz, you can really darken up the tone without kind of, in my opinion, kind of getting rid of it, the life and the touch sensitivity and things like that. So I would definitely encourage you on the Quad Cortex, or really any modelers, to explore the use of these. And like I said, for the most part, it's just kind of automatic for me now. When I create a new preset and I bring up an IR, bring up a cab, I set the high pass filter to 80, I set the low pass filter to 6,000, and I just start from there. Sometimes I might tweak them, sometimes I might not. But I think it really helps kind of give a more natural sound to the preset. So the other way you can use this, if we go back here and we turn the ambient effects back on, I'll just turn the delay back on, is you'll see that most of the delays and reverbs also have high pass filters and low pass filters built in. And this is a great way to kind of adjust the tonality of the effect that you're getting. So in this case, if we look at the tape delay, the default is 120 hertz for the high pass filter. So it's cutting off more of the low end. And the low pass filter is set to 3000. So it's really making this tape delay kind of warmer. And if you saw, for the clean tone, I actually had the low pass filter set up a little higher to 5000 because I wanted a little more sparkle to the delay. So if we maybe set that to 6000. So here it is with just the delay on the clean tone at 6000. And you kind of get more of the treble on those echoes. If we drop this down to, say, I don't know, something really low, like 2500, you can hear that the echoes are much darker. Let's move up the mix just a little bit so we can hear it a little better. So for me, I have a tendency to, on delays for clean tones, I'll give a little more top end to them because I kind of want that sparkle on the top end. But when I go to the lead tone, I usually will kind of bring down that a little bit so the delays have a little more of a darkness to them and kind of warms up the lead tone a little bit. And so you can do the same thing on the reverb. So we go back here and we turn off the delay. We turn on the reverb, you can see there's a high pass filter, there's a low pass filter. Again, I've got it set to 80 and 6000, and those are the defaults. So, I mean, that's, for the whole reverb, that's what it's set to. So if you want to kind of darken up the whole reverb, you can cut off some of that top end. Let's go ahead and so you can hear there's a good amount more top end on that. And if you wanted to kind of make it more sparkle, you could bring up the high pass. And that's more like, I don't know, you're in a tiled bathroom or something. So that's just something to keep in mind as you're tweaking presets, not only for the Quad Cortex, but really on any modeler. Use the high pass filter and low pass filter as liberally as you want. To me, it's a great tool for kind of creating a really dynamic, natural sounding tone, whether you're going for a dirty tone or a clean tone, and you can use it to adjust the effects and things like that. So I think it's something that every user of a modeler should really get to know how to tweak and how to play with and how to find kind of what works right for every tone you're going for. Anyway, I hope you found this helpful, and thanks for watching.